three-way pots where everybody has something are always great TV, right? And sometimes it's just a cooler. Sometimes there are really interesting decisions to be made. And we have one where there are really interesting decisions to be made because everybody's got interesting hands, especially William Reynolds and Lex Veldhuis. And William Reynolds in particular is going to have some big decision points on the turn and river here in the big game. It's a cash game.
Yeah, it's a 200, 400 cash game, but there's an $800 straddle as well. Lex is the effective stack with about $75,000 in front of him. The other two guys have got more than that. Of course, Tony G and William Reynolds, like significantly more. So there's a lot in play here, and a lot of chips are going to get into the middle.
Right, and these decisions that William Reynolds makes are probably why it was suggested by Alex Klaus on Twitter. If you have a suggestion for the breakdown, please tweet at us and include a YouTube link.
And also, please check out Nitrogen Sports Poker. They're our sponsor. They love us, and we love them. That's because they've got sports betting, casino games, and of course, poker, 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 baby.
Triple poker.
Yeah, it's the best kind. And of course, we also have our monthly Poker Guys tournament where they guarantee 1,000 buy-ins. We usually get about 100, not even 100 players.
Not even close.
There's a massive overlay, and the only way to get into that tournament, though, is to sign up with Nitrogen through the link that is on our Twitter page. You got to go there. We can't have it on YouTube. What are you going to do? So check that out if you want to get in and play that thing. It's super cheap to enter. There's all this free money. It's the greatest value in poker.
It might be the greatest value in poker that is repeating over time. We've done it many times. They keep just giving away the money because they're bad at business or something. I don't know, but it benefits you. Get a Nitrogen, get you some poker.
I'm starting a fad, and it's 2,500.
Raise. Roble.
Tony says commendable. Little head nod. And he's starting a new fad.
It's a repop.
5,000.
Sevens for Lex.
And Lex says, hey, I'm going to think about it.
Stop doing my job, Will.
Lex is tilted up, slightly tilted, slightly getting a bit whirly.
Let's get those two into the booth. I'll handle taking over Tony's stack.
Fair enough. Barry folds. Reynolds.
Forgot what I have. Okay, I closed the action.
Calls.
Close the door. At least you haven't slammed it in my face.
Not yet.
7, ace, 9. Lex flops a set.
Look at that.
Oh boy, this is an action flop.
Check, check, check. 10 of clubs on the turn.
That is a very dangerous card.
It brings multiple draws.
I think they covered the analysis.
Yep. Lex bets 13,000.
Lex isn't repping a draw. He's repping a made hand.
Yep. Lex is hoping to make these two pay to draw. What he doesn't know is that Will isn't drawing anymore.
He's got a straight.
You know no one has 8-jack.
Except the guy to your right.
So actually, technically, he does know someone has 8-jack.
Reynolds calls.
All right.
Tony with top pair and the nut flush draw.
A minimum I'm calling. I'm just thinking about moving in. Closing the action.
Closing the action, G style.
I'm promising I'm calling, but I'm thinking about a race, okay? I am contemplating a significant improvement of this pot size.
Both these guys would love that. Will especially.
Not just a pot juicer, the whole 9.
I just call. I got a nice position.
Tony calls.
I just call. Just keep it friendly.
4 of hearts on the river.
Even though this card didn't hurt him, Lex's set has officially been cracked. Let's see if he still thinks he can bet it for value. He could get himself in a whole lot of trouble if he does.
Lex bets 31-4.
Williams got the stone nuts, trying to figure out how much he wants to raise.
He just calls.
He must be trying to induce an overcall from Tony.
At least I'm not raising. I mean, 90% I'm calling. I mean, I'm going to lay this down, and I might as well not play poker. Wow. You got to think if you guys, unless Lex made a really big hand.
Williams' plan might just be coming together.
He's got chips.
Yeah, I fold.
Wow.
Set. I have the nuts. I thought Tony G would do it.
You like that 90%? I would have done it. Did you say I had a flush draw?
Mm-hmm. Lex is sick.
This hand was really interesting because it could have gone a lot of different ways, right? I mean, a lot of the actions that these players chose didn't have to happen. Going back to pre-flop, where Tony G, for some reason, decided to basically min-raise with the ace-5 of clubs. Maybe this is a function of him being up almost 400,000 in the game. He's just like, I'm Tony G, I'm having fun. Is that a good accent?
It's a really
Was
good
that
accent. It's a good impression,
Yeah.
even more so.
Yeah, I think it probably is. We don't have to get into how that's just a really bad play in general.
Yeah, sizing-wise.
Yeah, something more interesting is Lex's call pre-flop. Now, it looks like, okay, it's only 5,000 over 2,500, but when you think about it, Lex has only 75K in front of him, and he's only invested 200 in the pot. He's the small blind in a 200-400 game. There's a straddle, and then Reynolds makes it 2,500. So this is a pretty big, weird call with his stack size out of position.
It actually seems at least bad mathematically. Now,
Yeah.
maybe there's other reasons that we're not aware of that Lex makes this call, but here's some of the problems with it. Number one, Lex, as Grant's saying, only has 75K to start the hand, which means he can't really often get enough money, even when he makes a set and really coolers the hell out of someone, like if Tony G has aces or something like that. He's barely going to make enough money, but he's out of position, so it's harder to realize that. And William Reynolds can still reopen the action. So you put that all together, I think this is a fold, not a call. I actually like a 4-bet or a fold way better than a call here. I'm actually surprised he doesn't just 4-bet it when Tony G makes such a small raise.
Yeah, it seems like Tony G is usually just kind of messing around Tony G
Yeah.
style, you know, but I guess Lex decides this is okay, I can play this way because these guys are messing around too much, as we see William Reynolds kind of messing around under the gun with his Jack-8 suited, who is of course forced to call, and then we get to see this flop, which is kind of absurd. Tony flops an ace, which is nice, but it's by far the least exciting of the flops here.
Yeah, I mean, well, William Reynolds flops the combo draw, Lex flops the set, and it's not surprising at all that it checks through, because Lex is checking, probably to check raise, William Reynolds is checking, probably to check raise, and Tony G is just checking, because he now knows, once Lex cold calls all that if Tony G were to bet, it would be basically a game theory disaster where it's really hard to get action from worse hands, but every better hand in the world is not folding. And so I really like Tony G's check here. It's super smart.
Right, you could argue he want to charge the draws like William Reynolds' draw, but guess what? That draw is never folding, and it probably is check raising, and what are you going to do when you get check raised with ace-5 on this board? You're going to fold.
You're going to throw away the best hand,
Yeah,
right?
So it makes a lot of sense for Tony to check, and the other guys are just trying to check raise. It's also a range advantage board for Tony. It all makes sense, but we get to the turn, which is where the real intrigue starts in the hand, where Lex bets, of course. This makes a lot of sense. He's trying to build a pot here. Now, of course, this is the bingo bango turn card for William Reynolds, and it's pretty damn good for Tony G as well. And the most interesting decision on the turn is, should William Reynolds raise, or is this call the right play?
Right, obviously Lex bets. It's completely reasonable he's going to bet here with the set, trying to get some action from somebody. I think William Reynolds should raise. I think he should do it right now, and here's why. It doesn't feel very likely that Tony G's got a strong enough hand that he can overcall with that often. As we see, because he picks up the nut flush draw as well, he is able to overcall. That's cool, and William Reynolds actually gets to make an extra 13K by just calling here, as it turns out. But most of the time, Tony G's just gonna have an insta-fold after William Reynolds calls anyway. I guess William Reynolds is afraid of blowing Lex off the pot or something like that?
He shouldn't be, though, right? Because Lex is representing a pretty strong range in this spot with this kind of pretty wet board. Now, Lex has a ton of sets here, right? I mean, you wouldn't really think a set of 7s, but 9s and 10s, those feel like exactly the type of hand that Lex would play this way pre-flop. It feels like he's not going to go away that often. He's also got some aces up type hands, probably, if he's got 2 7s.
I mean, it's not the end of the world as Reynolds to call here to decide to raise the river instead. Now, we know ultimately he's not going to do that, so we'll talk about that when we get there. But that could be a reason, because you may think Lex is actually kind of out there and has wider ranges and takes more shots.
Sure.
And you want to give him a chance to fire one more time on the river before you raise in case he doesn't have much of a hand, which is certainly possible with Lex. And Lex is the kind of guy who will fire a lot on the river if we just call on the turn, because we can have a lot of draws as William Reynolds.
That's all fair, but I think the most of the time, even though it is Lex, he's going to have something that can call a raise, you know, like a frequent amount of time at least. He's going to have turn to combo draw, something like King, Queen of clubs or something like that, you know. There's a lot of different types of hands that Lex can have that can call, that William wants that action from, at the same point as him just getting lucky that Tony can overcall because he makes the nut flush draw here.
Super lucky.
If Tony has ace-5 of diamonds, it's an easy muck with the action as it goes. So I think William is making a mistake on the turn, let alone the river, where he decides to call again.
Yeah, this one feels like probably a bigger mistake, and let's get into it. So Lex bets half his stack on the river,
Yeah.
31,000. Lex only has 31,000 left. If Lex has a value hand, it's going to be really hard for him to fold. Now, a value hand has to be a pretty strong value hand, but he just bet 31,000 into 2 players who called on the turn.
Yeah.
So So he's only betting his stronger value here. Like maybe the worst hand he ever has is ace jack, the absolute worst. And
maybe.
I don't even know if he can have that. Maybe it's ace queen.
He has a lot of aces up. If he's going to play
Yes.
sevens pre-flop this way, he's probably going to play ace 10 suited pre-flop this way, hands
Probably.
like that. And the thing that really looms large, once again, for me, is the sets. Now, I wouldn't think sevens as much if I'm ranging him traditionally, but when he cold calls a 3-bet out of the small blind, 9s, 10s, and jacks feel like those are the hands, right? And a 9 and a 10 is out there. Those sound like great hands to try to get action from as William Reynolds. At the same point, I'm concerned about getting overcalled by Tony G.
It's really hard. I mean, I don't think William Reynolds is doing this necessarily to get overcalled, although that would be nice. I think he's doing it to, hopefully Tony G's going to make some crazy raise here or something like that. I don't know that Tony G's really going to do that. Lex bet, William Reynolds called. Lex only has 31K left. Lex usually has a polarized range here. Usually it's pretty strong. I don't know, man. I don't think this is the way to get the most money. I think the way to get the most money is to hope Lex has it this time, a good hand. He's often going to get the rest of that money.
Yeah, so I think ultimately the question for William is, do I want to try to get the rest of Lex's money? Do I think that's more likely, or do I think it's more likely that Tony G is going to overcall? And it's tough for Tony G to have an overcall. As we're talking about, he checked back on the flop because he had ace-5. If he had something like ace-king, he's probably betting that flop, right?
Usually.
And you're going to need him to have something like ace-queen plus to get an overcall out of Tony. So William kind of has to get lucky and have Tony have ace-4 suited instead of ace-5 suited, having rivered 2 pair. And that's kind of the only way I can imagine Tony having an overcall here. I think it's a lot more likely to get value from Lex's set or something akin to a set that Lex is likely to have in this spot. I think this is a bit of a mistake.
Yeah, me too. So there were a number of things here we actually didn't love about this hand. We didn't love Tony G's 3-bet sizing pre-flop.
Well, sure.
We didn't love Lex's cold call pre-flop. William Reynolds' decisions on both turn and river we thought were questionable as well. What do you guys think? Do you agree with us or not about these things? Do you think actually we're just wrong about Lex there and Lex absolutely can call with 7s? Do you think William Reynolds should be just calling with Tony G behind him? Because Tony G is liable to do some crazy things once in a while, that's for sure. Let us know in the comments. We definitely want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I think we took a pretty hard stance on Reynolds just calling both turn and river, thinking he should raise at least one of them and get more value that way. But if you have an opposite idea about that and you have really good points to back it up, I would love to hear that. I would also love you to check out this video that we made with Tony G in another 3-way cooler spot. Click right up here to check that out. That's 100K at the Aussie Millions.
It's a great hand, and Tony G is in a super tough spot for sure. Now, if you want to hear more about how we came to all these thoughts and decisions about this hand, we don't just, have a few notes or something like that. We actually hash it out on our podcast, The Poker Breakdown, presented by the Poker Guys.
When are you going to learn the name of our own podcast?
The Breakdown Poker Podcast with the Poker Guys.
Yeah, there you go.
We change the name like every 3 weeks.
But
it's
it's
not my fault.
never been those two things that you said before.
Okay, but it's like a word salad. You just put them together enough that
Yeah, it's fine.
Right.
I mean, if you
Anyway.
use it as a search engine thing, it'll probably come up anyway.
Anyway, you should check it out. It's on all your favorite podcast apps, and that's where we spend a good 45 minutes just talking about all the decisions of this hand and going really deep into them and really arguing about the things we disagree with, either with each other or with the players, and even the things we like and why.
Yeah, and if you like this video, make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel.